Why, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Voice of the Rings. I'm your hosting guide, Zollin Ironshield, and this is a LOTRO guide today, my friends. And I wanted to tell you guys about a real quick episode on what's the best trait line to go endgame in LOTRO for your class. Okay, so this is we're going to break this question down a little bit, and I need to do a little preferencing there. All right, so real quick, just to shout out, thank you to Diogo for posting this question in the comments. I'll just throw that out there, the name. Hope I didn't say that wrong, the Portuguese name. It's a nice name. I think I might have pronounced that slightly wrong. But very good question, awesome question, but we got to break something down about this. He made an example that, you know, a lot of captains are like, oh, the best line is to go yellow, the best line is to go blue, and there's this big kind of like conversation, right, about all the pros saying which, who, whatever. What's a pro, you know? Yeah, right? I mean, disclaimer, I've been playing this game since the very beginning, and I know a lot about a lot of classes, but I don't know every class, and I don't know everything, okay, you guys? So, again, I'll do my best to bring my knowledge to you through my guide videos, but no one knows everything, guys. Let's just put that out there right now. Okay, so, but we're going to do this. I'll help you break this down and make it easier for new players or people who need refreshers, and we're going to do a real quick run through, okay? So there's our little intro, and we'll get straight into it. So what is the best line? So for example, we'll go through all the classes real quick. I'll do it really fast, boom, 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 make a real quick video. If you guys do enjoy this, you know, Charlie wants me to remind you, don't forget to like and subscribe if it does help you out. And also, I'm going to make a series probably on each character. I already have deep dives on every character, so I will probably put it into my deep dives of each class. Excuse me, I said character, I meant class. But we'll go through it little by little here. But if you guys enjoy this video and you want more, make sure you leave a comment so I know that to make more of these, more for each class, all right? But we're gonna go through each class real fast right now anyway. So one thing that might be a little bit of a, for newer players, again, can be a little confusing, the trait trees for each class. We'll start with the Guardian, is that you have to realize that Standing Stones, the company does a pretty good job of balancing all the trees for what you need them for. So that's what is a little bit confusing. A lot of people are like, oh, this is the best trait tree to always go. Well, it's a little bit situational. Some classes more than others, all right? But we do need to think about that it is situational, and there's really not one overall best tree. It just depends on what you're doing. All right, so that's something we need to make sure is in our minds immediately. Okay, so that does matter. But now, with that in mind, I'll do a little overview of each class here for you. Okay, so for Guardians, for melee classes, a lot of times the blue tree, or I'm gonna do a respec here so you can see the blue tree is usually more defensive, more for tanking tree for most of the melee classes. You'll kind of see where usually the blue tree for other races, again, even a lore master, for example, who is a magical character, right, with his blue tree is about his companion, usually to help them be stronger. They usually are your tank if you're playing one solo with a lore master. So again, there is a little bit, red line is usually high damage, okay? You can kind of think of red line as always being kind of more of the high damage. You will see there are some slight differences between the classes as we go, but these are very generalistic, okay? Very generalistic, but just to help newer players, because this was directed at, this question was for a new player. He asked if I could do a video on this, which is a great video idea. So, and then the yellow is usually more of a CC-based tree, which is crowd control if you're a new player, like holding enemies down, or certain buffs, a buffing tree or whatever. And a lot of new things, they've done some updates where a lot of times the yellow tree is actually just kind of a support tree to the other two choices. They've done this update, they just updated the Minstrel to be more of a support tree. And I'll explain real quick why this is important, okay? Normally when you trait into one of these trees, right, you can watch my trait tree video if you want. I go into more detail. But normally when you trait into one of these trees, when you put 1 point into the one you actually traded into, for example, red tree here for me, does 1. When I put anything in the blue or yellow now, it costs 2 of my points down here. Do you notice? So I have 97 available. If I do it, now it's 95, right? Versus if I put one in the red tree, it's only 1 point, okay? So it costs more. But now, when it comes to Minstrels and Brawlers, the newest class, if you put points in the yellow tree, once you only can trait into the blue or red, and the yellow one, it's always just 1 extra point too, okay? So it's more of a support tree to the other 2 trees. That's not with all the classes. Most of them are all unique, and all the other 2 will cost 2 to put in once you've traded into the 1 tree. All right, hopefully that's worded in a way that's not too confusing for you guys. All right, so again, let's do a quick run through now that you have that kind of overview idea. of the different trait trees. And again, the yellow one's more of like a supportish CC tree buffs you'll see with the Lore Master especially. Pretty much when it comes to a Guardian, if you're going to be being the heavy main tank, all right, you're probably going to want to go to the blue tree, okay? Again, I'm going to do the really quick for the next 10 minutes of this video. Boom, we're going to go through all the classes with this. I'm going to give you real quick ideas of what probably the best thing is for what you're doing, okay? Again, the question of the video is, what's the best end trait tree to use for your class? That is a very hard question to just outright say, oh, this is the best one, because realistically, it depends on what you're doing, okay? That's really, that has to be the premise of the question. What are you doing? So for new players, blue tree for Guardian, really good for tanking, taking a lot of damage, keeping a lot of stuff. Yellow tree, you'll notice, has a lot more special abilities. Where you have more targets you can hit. Again, you have to go through. You can watch my deep dive videos on every class too. I will have more of those too. I already have one on the Guardian if you want to check it out during the time of this video. But it's more focused heavily on targets, like more targets. You're more of the off tank, and you have some special abilities that do a lot more light damage and things like that. Again, so overall with Guardians, if you're gonna tank, I would say the best one is the blue tree, okay? If you're gonna do damage, if you're gonna be using a two-handed weapon, you're gonna wanna use the red tree. And yes, Guardians can do decent damage, okay? They might not be the best at it in the game, but they can do very good damage and keep up. A lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people don't think that's the case. As someone who's played a Guardian for a long time, yes, could they use little buffs on that area? Yeah, they could. But again, the Guardian is mainly supposed to be one of the main tanks in the game. So blue tree, that's the one to go for doing heavy tanking. Yellow tree is kind of more an off tank thing, more targets. Maybe you're not doing the boss, you're doing a bunch of ads. That's the yellow tree is very good for that. And more targets meaning AoE area of effect. And red tree is good for TPS. Okay, next class. Here we go. Ready? Baruch Kazad. By the way, it's Diogo is the name that I mispronounced. Just throwing that out there. Fix that real quick. Thank you for your question. All right, so the champion. All right, so this is the champion. Let's go over him real quick, or whatever race or person you're playing. We have the blue line again is a tankish stance. You can see right here, without even clicking into it, it actually says it. Damage soaking tank who prefers offense over defense. Again, if you're a new player, use these. Before you click spec into 1, 2, or 3, one of the trees, make sure you read these little descriptions at the top, okay? Again, I didn't show that with the Guardian, but you can go read it yourself if you're a Guardian. It's very simple. So again, blue line, tank. If you're going to be tanking, let's say you don't have a Guardian there, you don't have a captain, you don't have a warden, you need to be a tank for your team, and you can't quite survive in red line. A lot of times you can do it anyway. You can just survive in a DPS playing as two-handed swords or something. But you want to take out a shield because you really need to be the main tank. Blue line is the way to go. All right. Red line, high damage. Massive, massive damage on single target. Again, it says right there, single target. Crit melee based, okay? You can crit really high. You can do tons of damage to that one target. You're just blowing them up, okay? Yellow line, AoE. Again, if you're a newer player, that means area of effect. How many targets you can hit, okay? Really good at doing tons of damage to lots of targets. If you're cleaning up ads, meaning other enemy computer characters, right? Lots of orcs that are attacking you. You need to do lots of AoE damage, not just one single target. That's better. So again, it's situational. If you're a champion, your goal is that you're being the main tank. You want to go blue line. If you are doing massive damage to the boss and you want to kill the boss as fast as you can, there's not a lot of ads or other enemies, you probably want to be red line. If you are fighting a raid that has tons and tons of mobs and lots of orcs coming at you, or goblins or whatever in the Lord of the Rings Online, you need to go the yellow tree, okay? So it's that simple, all right? It's that simple. And again, the specking thing works the same way. If you spec in a red, it costs 1 point to put in a red. Blue and yellow is going to cost 2 points, okay? That's that simple, you guys. So for when it comes to the champion, I would recommend, again, it's fun if you're soloing to go red line or yellow line, right? That's really up to you what you want to be doing. If you're going to clear a whole camp to do a quest, yellow line might be better. If you like just blowing people up and one guy just dying really, really fast, the red line might be good for you, okay? Again, I would highly recommend for champions, since they are they're geared towards more of an AoE class. The yellow line's probably the best in that area. But again, I'm sure there's people that would probably disagree and be like, no, you should always go the red line. You still can do decent AoE, because you can. There are abilities that still hit multiple targets. So again, and by the way, feel free to leave a comment. if you have a different thought on something, I'm totally fine with that. As long as it's respectful and just adding to the conversation, I love that. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, Baruch Kazad. All right, we're on the captain. Let's talk about the captain now. All right, the captain, again, we can bring up the trait tree panel here, and I'm sure you all know how to find the trait tree panel, but it's pretty much that little mini Gandalf button right down there. All right, or you can also go into here, and I believe it is J for traits. All right, and it's the top one. I have the little tabs. It's the top one. Okay. So captains are actually very, very powerful tanks. The goal of a captain is to be more of a support class, but they can deal lots of damage. They can heal pretty decently, and they can also tank very well because of their massive upgrade stats, and they have an ability that allows them to heal. Again, I have base videos on every class if you want to check those out, but let's talk about the traits. Let's not make the video too long. All right, so again, blue line, once again, now interestingly enough, with the captain, it's a little bit different. So this is kind of a little exception to the rule I was saying. The blue line is more focused on a healing tree, okay, for captains. So, and you'll find that in the non-melee classes, okay, the blue tree is usually the main healing tree, okay? So they kind of like did a little crossover there between, even though technically the captain's a melee class, it's kind of based more like a minstrel would be, or a RuneKeeper with the trees, all right? So just keep that in mind. So it's the main healing tree, really. Red is take charge, use tactics and melee attacks to deal damage. It's your damage dealing tree, all right? Again, heal allies. You can still do damage on the blue tree. It just, again, it says it right here, right? It's really simple. If you just read this, guys, this will be a really good thing. But again, the question of this video is, what's the best trait tree, okay? I would say for a captain, since your goal is to be more of the support character, right? If you're not tanking, is probably going to be the blue tree, all right? So, and defense allies while wielding two-handed weapons. Two-handed weapon one is more with your, based on supportive things and your halberd. It's more of a support tree / CC tree, even though you don't really CC very much as a captain, crowd control. But I would definitely recommend, you're probably going to end up wanting to go into the blue tree. It's also the one that makes you a bit better at tanking. I believe it has the tanking stats, or it might be the yellow one. Again, I don't play the captain too much. Again, I don't know everything, you guys, but just from all my friends and what I have played to my certain level of captains, the blue tree is good for that, right? It's good for the more tanky healing tree. And they have an ability, right? Captains have an ability where they're invulnerable for a few seconds. They can't die. That also makes them good tanks. But it really comes down to what you really want to do with this. And again, I'll have a deep dive video on captains as well if you want to check it out. But I'd say for a captain, this is the one where people always argue, right? This is the one where the whole question was based on, right? What's the best trait tree to go end game? That's really going to depend on what you're doing, and you're really going to have to go through and decide with these abilities, what do you need for your situation? You can hover them with your mouse, and they'll say exactly what they do, okay? So obviously, yellow tree gives you more targets to hit right there at the bottom, right? You also get Shield of the Dunedain, right? Which is really powerful. You basically send a power to protect an ally, and they take negative 75% damage, right? For 10 seconds, right? This is really, really powerful. Again, I would say if you're being more of a supportive leader, last stand duration makes you more invincible. It's really, I would probably recommend, just from those 3 abilities at the bottom, that the yellow tree is probably the one to go, right? If you're being more of maybe a tank and supportive. Again, last stand is a huge one for your tanking. And it says right there that it increases your duration of last stand and the cooldown of it. So you can use it more often, which is kind of huge for tanking. So again, but this is if you were tanking with a two-handed. Again, you could tank, I believe, still with your one with a shield on that too as well. And then if you go over to the heal one too, right, skill damage, inspiration, restores maximum morale. Again, there's a lot more healing abilities in this one's. Their healing skills have a higher 20% chance to stack, right? The better heal. Again, this really, the left one really relies on shielding, okay? The middle one is really going to be more on the heavy damage. So in this case, if you're really going to be tanking, like directly tanking, you're probably going to want to be the yellow tree. Unless you think you can tank while you're having more heals. That can also be good. Let's say you don't really have a good healer, or someone in your group, you're 3-manning something. Maybe you want to be the blue line, so you can kind of heal yourself and tank, okay? But I would say yellow for tanking more. Red is going to be more of damage and support. Again, if you look, a lot of these are just increasing your damage and making sure it's pretty much just a lot of damage things if you hover them. So again, two-handed, all your damage more powerful. So again, red tree gonna be your damage. Leader of men, that's gonna be, you're kind of in the front, you're gonna be a little tankier, that kind of thing. And hands of healing is gonna be your healing tree. So what's the best one to use end game? Well, again, what does it matter? What I've been saying this whole video, it matters what you're doing in the situation. So end game, if you're gonna be the tank, probably the yellow line, unless for some reason you need to go the blue line. If you're gonna be more of supporting and you just want to do a lot more damage, the red line's probably gonna be the way to go. All right. Which one's better? If you're just going from flat end, the end skills here at the bottom, honestly, Shield of the Dunedain as a support for your friends, and also the ability to have faster cooldown on Last Stand, which is your invulnerability to not die, and last longer. That's really good. So Yellow Tree, I would just, from those 3 bottom skills alone, would say that it's probably the way to go if you're tanking. Or even as a support, it seems pretty darn good. Those are some good abilities. But again, I'm sure there's some people who disagree and say, oh no, these damage ones are better, and there's certain things this one does that's even better, right? 20% chance if your Herald Archer attacks to reduce enemies' armor. That's kind of cool too. So again, that's more buffing your companion there. So that is completely up to what you want to do there, but that's what I would recommend on more tanking, probably the Yellow Tree. All right, for the end game. Blue would be more of the healing. Red would be more of the red. It's all situational. So anyway, let's jump to the next class. Baruch Kazad. All right, so now we are on the Hunter class. Again, I know technically Warden, Beorning are melees, but we're gonna talk about the Hunter because it's one of the original classes first. And then we'll go over to them. And again, feel free to ask questions in the comments, guys. I do read my comments, as you can see. I'm making a video because of a comment. I asked people what would they like, and that was a good answer. All right. So we have Huntsman, Bowmaster, and the Trapper of Foes. So when it comes to hunters are they're really high damage dealers in this game, right? That's one of their main goals. But again, if you look at these, what's the best one in game, right? That's the question of this whole episode. Blue line, the big one to take away from the blue line, all right, it's the fact that you can shoot while you run. All right, that's really cool. Okay, so if you need to be kiting. Kiting means, well, think of like a kite in the sky, right? That you're flying and you're running along so it travels with you. Well, same thing with enemies, right? You're running so they can't hit you. Well, you can shoot them. Okay, so blue is good for that, and it also has some CC things and stuff that you can do. Inductions based. See, there's some more details. So again, at the top, a mobile, harassing mid-ranged hunter. So you're not super far distance, right? You lose a little bit of range, but you can run around and kite. All right. There's also some immobilizing abilities you can see here. It explains some of it there, and you can spec into it. And then we got the Bowmaster. This is kind of the fun one. You can see the giant damage numbers. Okay. And it gives you really good range, which usually a lot of your abilities you can't shoot while you move because they'll miss, and a lot of them are inductions. What's an induction? Well, this is a little bit more important for ranged classes, okay? Because it's something where they can't move, and there's a little bar that charges at the bottom, right? And then it casts the ability, okay? Most melees don't really have this problem as much. Most abilities in melees don't do that. There's 1 or 2 exceptions, but the casting for range, okay, but your damage is going to be through the roof with this, and it does have some CC, okay? There's like pinning shot where you can root someone. It then allows you to, shoot Heartseeker, which has a very long induction, and it's pretty much the shot that you can one-shot someone. It's pretty fun. It's a fun ability. So I used to remember in PvP, quick little story, where the wargs, other people playing wargs on the monster player side, or player versus monster player is what it's called. And a hunter would come out of stealth and root one, and then it's like 3 or 4 hunters would all just do Heartseeker on the target, and the warg just ran as fast as it could to try to get out of range. And if they all shot anyway, it just die. Just that guy's dead. And it was pretty fun. It was pretty fun to watch. So high damage, red line. The yellow line, Trapper of Foes. Well, you probably understand what this is. Again, it's a CC and AoE line, okay? So this is the one where they can hit a lot more targets with their arrows, like Rain of Arrows and different abilities, and also they have high crowd control abilities, okay? This is really good if you're being the main form of crowd control and you have to crowd control a bunch of NPC mobs, right? Even if you're playing player versus monster player, this might be good if you want to CC the enemies. But realistically, this would be for doing a raid or an instance where you need to hold a lot of people down, because let's say maybe you don't have a lore master with you, which are usually pretty good at that, or another class, and let's say you don't really have a really powerful tank, you're all a bunch of squishies, right, that aren't full tanks, this might be a good trait tree for you to use. So what's the best endgame trait tree? Gosh, man, I think the blue one, the ability to be able to kite and move is very, very good. But again, if you're fighting a raid where you need as much damage on that single target as you can get, it's going to be the red line. And if you need a lot of CC to stop a bunch of NPC mobs from attacking you, non-player characters, all right, NPC, I'm telling you guys the abbreviations a lot for newer players, okay? Just in case you're new to MMOs. If you're coming from another MMO, then I'm sorry, you probably already know this. And then the CC yellow line. So again, what's best? That's really up to what you're doing. I would recommend highly the blue one is very good for survivability, that you can do damage and still move. Red if you're doing the main, damage in a raid, and if you need the CC, yellow line. So there we go. All right, next one, Baruch Kazad. All right, we're back, and we're gonna now look at the burglar class. All right, let's bring it up real quick here. Bring up our traits. All right, so we have the, actually, can I just switch this one? Yes, please switch, there we go. All right, we have the Gambler, okay? Uses damage over time and chance to defeat foes. Again, this one, it can be a little tricky with the burglar because there is a little bit of CC in most of the trees, crowd control, but the blue one is more focused on a lot of the tricks and gambits and these different abilities that are kind of fun to use. Again, if you want to look at my video on burglars, I'll have an in-depth one too in the future. It might already be on the guide playlist, but they have a lot of cool things they can use out. The red one is going to be focused far more on stealth and damage to single target. Again, you can use it at the top, right? Again, the blue one uses damage over time and chance to defeat foes. Okay, red, use stealth and position tactics to deal damage. Again, high damage, right? And you're kind of like sneaking on people. And then the Mischief Maker, right? Applies and removes tricks to hidden foes. All right, hinder foes, excuse me. The yellow one I actually see a lot of people use. It's very powerful as well. The burglar one is a class that it feels very unique compared to the other classes. I've always thought that it has a very different play style than other classes. You still want to get behind your foe to the best you can in a raid or something, but because they have specific abilities that do more damage from the back. But it's still a very fun class. Again, what's the best one, right? What's the answer? What is the best one? I personally, when I do soloing, when I'm questing, I love to use the red line. But realistically, if you want to be very, very proficient with a burglar later for raids and stuff, you'll probably be using the yellow line, all right? Or possibly the blue one with gambits. Gambits is more fun. They have some really cool things they can do as well. But again, you can kind of see in here, right? All in, right? So you increase attack speed by 50%, melee. So it's a lot of like, it's more like you're giving something up to gain something, hence why gambling, right? It's a chance that it might pay out in the end. Gambits, damage, a lot of your gambit abilities, even the odds chance, 100%, that's a certain ability. Again, you'll need to know all the abilities, so you probably want to go look at my video on them later, or just check them out, read them yourself. You can read them yourself as well. You can just have them and read them. But the red line, positional damage, again, that's from the back. More, and coup de grace, it's a very cool skill, very fun. It allows you to go in stealth again to use a certain ability, even though you're not in real stealth, but it's still a cool ability. And then again, the Mischief Maker, if you notice, will probably have a lot more CC and clever, yeah, Dust in the Eyes, which is a CC. It's more of your crowd control. Again, it follows along the lines of yellow tree is usually more of the crowd control tree. There are trick skills, now AoE, and tricks can stack with it. Now, AoE and, again, AoE and CC, it follows along the line of what I said at the beginning. That's what Yellow Tree usually is. So, again, Yellow Tree is very good for raids, and it's also, I've seen people use it in the player versus monster player mode endgame. So, Yellow Tree is very good. Red Tree is high damage, and the Blue Tree is more of the how gambits work, and it's more of a... It's damaged mixed with give and take for certain things. It's just a little bit different play style. It's still very fun. So, but I would highly recommend probably, you're going to want to be, if it's high damage, you're going to be red line. If you're doing more of a raid, you want CC and stuff, it's going to be the yellow line. This one's yellow is very powerful in the game. Again, blue is good. I have some friends that like to use blue. They've told me that are like burglar mains, that they like to use blue still. So again, it is situational what you're doing. And of course, sometimes it comes down to preference. play all of them, and say, oh, I really like how this one plays more, then use that one. But again, you might have to occasionally change to accommodate for the fact that you're doing a certain kind of raid or a certain type of thing. That's why situation does matter. And don't forget, you have these two little things on the side. I'm not sure if you have to get one originally, but you can switch between two trees without having to respec every time. So anyway, all right, let's do the next one. Baruch Kazad. All right, so now we're on the Minstrel. Let's talk about the Minstrel for a minute. All right, so the Minstrel, now the Minstrel is pretty straightforward in certain ways, but again, like I told you, they've redone it a little bit. So let me go to my second page here. If you notice now, when you go into specking, it says the Watcher of Resolve, right? Shield and heal your allies with songs. So this is your main healing branch. Remember how I told you with the range, it's usually going to focus more on healing, despite the captain, it's kind of in the middle of a ranged class / melee class. As you again, it is your heavy healing. If you're going to be the main healer, which Minstrels are one of the main healers in the game, they really are the official real main healer, and then we have a couple other ones that are pretty good at it now too. Healing line is blue. Okay, so if you're a healer, you want to be blue. This is pretty straightforward as a Minstrel. End game, heals, blue line. All right. You're going to be a DPS class, you're not going to be healing? Red line. All right, so again, for Minstrels, it's very easy. Captains is a much harder one to break down into which one is best for endgame with situation. And again, as you can see, it so uses harsh words to damage foes, shield and heal your allies with the blue line, and spins tails to motivate allies. Again, it's a buff tree or a CC tree, right? Or an AoE tree. Yellow is always one of those things usually, and in this case it is. Now if you notice, you can't spec into yellow. That's something they just updated with Minstrel. Some people like it, some people don't like it. We won't go into that. So let's, for example, if I want to buff into this one, if I put a point into red, it's only costs 1. If I put a point into blue, it costs 2. But if I put a point into yellow, it only costs 1. So so no matter which one you trade into, yellow will always cost 1 extra. It's kind of like an extra stuff to put on one of the other trees. So again, it's usually more of buffs and debuffs to your enemy or your allies and things that kind of help you in either way. And it does matter. Some of these will change a little bit depending on which tree you're in, but it's about the same. So again, yellow tree, that's kind of stuff you put on to later in your trading. So realistically, Minstrels are very straightforward. Blue, heal. Red, damage. All right? You can't really even heal in red stance if you're in the dissonance stance. It only allows you to heal yourself. It says there at the bottom. All heals become self-only. All right? So you can heal yourself, but it's not good for healing your team. So if you're wondering why your heals aren't working, guys, on one of your teammates, you might be in the dissonance stance if you're a new player. So keep that in mind. All right, ready? Baruch Kazad. All right, we are on the Warden now. Let's talk about the Warden. The Warden is one of the more complicated classes in the game, I've always thought. It's a very fun class, but there's a lot of memorization with the they have a real gambit system, right? Not just the gambler like the burglar. I think, did I say games with burglars? They gambler. Anyway, they have some things called that too, an ability, but it's not important right now. All right, let's go into our trait tree here. So for Wardens, all right, and again, it depends on the situation, okay? Blue line is it's very self-explanatory, that first line, and then it shows details underneath, right? Wield shield and fist to protect allies from harm. You're a tank. Okay, that is your heavier tank tree. Again, blue, usually the tank tree for melee. It's like we've always been talking about since the beginning. They try to keep a similarity between classes unless there's a real big difference, okay? Red wields deadly warlike techniques to defeat foes. This is your high damage tree, okay? So if you're being one of the main damage dealers, and if you're soloing, red is usually a really nice one to do, okay? Yellow assailment wields javelins and clever tactics to harm and hinder foes. This is one that buffs your javelins. So, and you have a lot of buffs for yourself and some debuffs for your enemies. But it really, what it does is, Wardens are a very unique class. They can go from being a melee class to a ranged class pretty much. So yellow is more if you're going to be more of the range, and you know you're going to be fighting at range a lot, and you like to use the range combos, you're going to want to go yellow tree, okay? So again, it's really that simple with the Wardens. Again, I could go into a whole nother deeper video, and again, please guys, Zollin wanted me to remind you, don't forget to like and subscribe. This is helping you out. You're still here, and I appreciate you watching the video. And if this is something you like and you want more details on one of these classes later, I'll make more videos for you. So I already have a couple real basic class reviews, but I'm going to make more in-depth class reviews. I have 1 or 2 already at the time of me making this video, but there'll be more in the future. All right, so it's pretty much that it. So what's the best for end game? Well, again, it's always situational, but red is high damage, yellow is your ranged, and a little bit of CC things you can do and stuff like that, and blue is your survivability and basically you being a tank, or like a really powerful tank. Wardens are always pretty good at tanking. They have a lot of evade and stuff, but yeah, it's just kind of cool. And again, you can go into your character, and Wardens usually only wear medium armor. They can't wear heavy armor like other classes, but that are tanks, but they don't need it because they have a lot of self-heals and a lot of evasion, and that's kind of their thing. They're more of an evading class. So yeah, they're pretty cool. Wardens are an awesome class. They're pretty cool. All right, next one, Baruch Kazad. All right, now we are on the Lore Master. All right, so the Lore Master is a very fun class. They are pretty much the wizard, right, of the game, but they also are the people that have pets. Okay, so here's how the Lore Master is not a super hard class to understand. They are very complicated to use, however, even being one of the original classes, okay? The newer classes are Warden and RuneKeeper, and the newest, and Beorning, and the newest one is a Brawler, okay? I'm keeping it kind of in order. Not quite. I should have done RuneKeeper probably, Lore Master first, but that doesn't matter. So the Lore Master is focused, the blue line heavily focuses on the strength of your friend, healing your friend. It gives you the Eagle Companion to use when you have it up, which is really a cool companion. Basically, if you are defeated, he will run over to your body if he's alive, and he will revive you. Okay, so that's pretty cool. They have some really cool abilities. So that's the blue line. It's really focused heavily on helping your companion and buffing them and that kind of stuff. And heals. Heals is a big one. Your blue line also gives you better heals, including for your friends, all right? Your other, not just your companion NPC animal, but also your people in your fellowship, so heals. So again, it's about your companion, who is kind of a tank. So again, if you notice, blue line for Lore Masters is kind of a weird mix between healing and a tank for your pet. You notice all the other classes where blue was either healing or a tank's tree. Well, it's kind of mixed for Lore Masters, okay? Keeper of Animals. Master of Nature's Fury. All right, the red line for Lore Masters. It's the fun one. I'm going to be honest. It's the fun one, okay? You get all the exploding. You get the Fire Gourd of Explosion. You get the Lightning Storm. You get the Tornado Hurricane. You get the Ents Go to War ability where you summon a big Ent above you and crush everyone. It's your high damage dealing. It's your damage dealing tree. Lore Masters are extremely good at dealing AoE damage, and they're also very good at their single target damage isn't bad either, because they've got a lot of DOTs, which are dots over time, damage over time, not dots. It's called DOT, but damage over time, okay? For people who might not know what that term means, I would try to clarify the terms, like I said at the beginning of the video. The yellow tree is your crowd control and debuff tree, CC tree. It lets you control the battlefield. I always like to say that about the yellow tree. It's the control the battlefield. Lore Masters are one of the best at controlling the battlefield in the game, okay? They have massive amounts of area of effect. They have debuffs. They have buffs for their allies. It's crazy. So for example, I had like 6 jobs in one raid one time when I was playing my Lore Master a few years ago, a lot in our raids. I would have to CC 2 different groups of enemies, keep them stunned or locked down. I had to buff the tank, make sure buff stayed on him. I was healing people. I was making sure my pet was aggroing something else while I did a certain amount of damage to someone, and I was debuffing the boss and a couple other things while I buffed my allies. So there's a lot of... It can get very confusing, but basically the yellow tree... If you're gonna say, what do you want, what's the best tree, if you have a, for endgame, okay? Here's what I would say. If you need to deal a bunch of damage in your team or your raid, or whatever you're doing, red tree, okay? If you need another tank and you wanna be able to heal a lot better than you could normally, the blue tree, all right, with your pet. If you are the actual kind of fulfilling your normal role in a raid, which would probably be yellow tree. So again, I guess I would personally say yellow tree is probably the way to go. If you have everyone you need, you have a good tank, you have a good healer, you have good damage in your team. What you guys need is buffs and controlling the enemies. See, the yellow tree is going to be the way to go as a Lore Master. Okay, good. So that's, I would say the yellow tree is one of the best end game trees for raids, which is probably a big thing you need it for. If you're kind of just having fun soloing and doing stuff, the red tree obviously is going to be the most fun for you and do the most damage. And the blue tree could also be fun for soloing and have a really strong pet that can protect you and you won't have to worry about much. Because you can still do damage in all three trees. The red one just gives you a lot more AoE and big abilities. All right, so there we go. That's about it for the Lore Master. I'm here at Erebor. See, there's the mountain behind me. And there's Dale over there. All right, next one. Baruch Kazad. All right, we're here at Anorian. And we're going to talk about the RuneKeeper now. We talked about the Warden. The RuneKeeper and Warden came out the same year in the game. They came out with the Moria stuff. Pretty cool. So let's talk about them real quick. It's, again, your blue tree is your healing tree, protecting your teammates, okay? So the blue tree is the massive healing one. The red tree deals damage over time, and it's very, there's a lot of AoE in the red tree. So that's one thing that's a little confusing about the RuneKeeper. There is some AoE damage in the yellow tree as well, but basically you have a couple times of atonements, right? You have the atonement where you go into the healing side, which basically is blue, or damage, right? Which is going to be your yellow or red tree. Again, red is very good at single target killing as a raid boss, okay? So here's the distinction between the RuneKeeper. There's something interestingly different here. The RuneKeeper's yellow tree is focused very heavily on single target burst damage. It's very good in player versus multiplayer PvP or soloing. You do a bunch of lightning bolts, boom, 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 big damage, dead, fried. If you're trying to take down millions of HP on a boss, you're going to be able to deal more DPS, which is the term damage over time, right? So burst damage is damage obviously instantaneous. You just kill something that only has a couple thousand health. Boom, dead. That's really good. The yellow tree is really good for that. Over time damage to defeat a raid boss, where you can not run out of power and you can consistently do lots and lots of damage every second for a 10-minute fight in a raid. The red tree, okay? You're fire. You're lots of AoE too. There's a lot more AoE. So if it's a red tree, you've got a boss and then suddenly mobs come in, you can still do a bunch of AoE. So the red tree really is very powerful for defeating raid bosses and hitting multiple targets, okay? Even though the yellow tree does have some abilities to hit multiple targets, but they don't add DOTs, which is, you know, damage over time, and they're all single target usually, mostly, okay, with the yellow tree. Again, there's a little bit of discrepancy between the two, but again, if you're gonna say, what's the best end game? If you're healing, you're gonna have to go blue tree. That's the best end game tree. If you're fighting a raid boss that you need to do tons of damage to, and a lot of mobs, I mean, it's going to be the red line. If you're going to be doing it where you need to be moving a lot, remember the moving thing I was talking about with the hunter? How the blue tree with hunter, they can move, versus the red one with a lot of range and high damage, but they can't move a lot, or the yellow? When it comes to the RuneKeeper, you can't move a lot with the red tree. A lot of them are induction-based abilities. Remember, we were talking about inductions. That's really, really, really important. So induction-based abilities in the red tree, a lot of channeling, right? Even one of your most powerful called Smoldering Wrath. It does a huge amount of fire damage every second, but you have to stand there for the channel. It's like 8 seconds. And if you get knocked out, stunned, anything, it'll interrupt you. If you have to move, it'll interrupt, it'll stop doing the damage. The yellow tree, you don't have to worry about that. The yellow tree, most all the abilities are instant. You can do them while you move. So if you need to be dodging a lot, let's say it's a raid, you have to move a lot. You can't stop and hold still. You have to constantly be moving. It may be better for you to be in yellow tree for that raid. So again, it is situational, and that's why it's hard to say, what's the best tree? I want to just give you like, oh, for me personally, I love to use the yellow tree. It's fun to shoot lightning bolts out of my fingertips. Unlimited power. Anyway, but yeah, it's just, I would recommend that you use it depending on the situation, okay? The red tree is better at doing high amounts of damage over time to a raid boss, though. If you don't have to move a lot, and you're doing a normal kind of raid with a lot of mobs that come out too, the red tree is going to be the best for you. If you're having a lot of PvP or you need to move a lot, and you like lightning bolts, the yellow tree is best for you, okay? That's pretty much it. That is pretty much it, you guys. So anyway, next character, or class, Baruch Kazad. All right, we're on the Beorning, my friends. Beornings are usually in a humanoid form, right, until they get their rage up and turn into a bear. All right, as you all know, you know the lore of the Lord of the Rings. It is cool that they added this class in Lord of the Rings Online. I love it. They can dual wield, they use a bow, and they can also use a single-handed weapon. But then they turn into a bear at a certain point, okay? They're able to get their rage up, generate a certain amount of rage, and then turn into a bear, right? Now, when you turn into a bear, it will change your skills on your bar, and it'll actually switch your skill bar. If you notice, see how it's switched down there? You can change it to do it in certain other ways to make that a little less confusing, but we're not going to go into that. That'll be in a class video about the class. We're going to go into its trait tree. What endgame trait tree is the best for Beornings? Again, as I've been saying all along, it matters in the situation. All right, so it says it right here. The hide emphasizes on durability of the bear form. All right, so this one is going to be mostly focused on your tankiness. All right, so your tank stats, it's going to be for you either as a human form, and again, it will say right the difference if you're a human form or bear form, and it makes you very, very tanky. See, look at that. Armor in bear form up 30%, health health in bear form up 20%, so it makes you very, very tanky. So this is the tank tree for Beornings. Okay, so if you're going to be tanking and you want to be durable, it's going to be the blue tree. All right, the claw. This is your consumes wrath to deal crushing damage. This is your high damage tree, okay? Whether you're in human form or you're in bear form, you are going to be killing people in this form, okay? Now, this is, remember that exception I said some melee classes will have abilities that hold still while they cast? Beornings are one of them. They have this one right here called Brutal Energy, which gives them these Fury Claws ability, and they basically stand up, and anything in an AoE in front of them gets hit. So it doesn't matter. It could be any amount of targets, which is kind of a cool thing, right? Usually abilities say it hits up to 6 targets. It hits up to 10 targets. Well, it doesn't matter. You could have 100 targets in front of you, and it's going to hit them all, as long as they're all in this little cone in front of you, right? And your bear just goes, rah, just ravages, and you just do a massive amount of damage over a certain amount of time, and you'll see a little induction bar. If you move during it, it'll cancel it. You won't get the full damage off in that area. Sometimes you'll have to move, or you get silenced or knocked back or stunned or whatever, you know, some mechanic in the game. So again, red, high damage, okay? High damage. Yellow line, the roar, all right? Provides healing and crowd control. Now look at that. Interesting. So there is a little bit of a discrepancy here because it's a melee class, remember, and a newer class. The yellow tree usually is CC, support, all that kind of stuff. So they threw in healing into this tree, even though technically usually it's the blue tree, right, for most classes. But again, it's usually range that have healing in blue. But again, then there's the captain, right, has that weird little... So there's a couple of exceptions, like I said from the very beginning of the video. But the yellow tree is your healing tree and supportive tree and crowd control, okay? So you kind of can buff your allies, heal your allies and yourself, and do a lot of CC to the enemies and debuff them and stuff like that. So again, it really depends on what do you need for that end game thing. Do you need to be the main healer and kind of support? You probably want to go the yellow tree. You need to do more damage and hit more targets and stuff. You'll probably want to go the red tree. You need to be the main tank and be durable and you have a healer already. You want to go blue tree. All right. It's about that simple. We'll do a more in-depth video if you'd like. Make sure you leave comments. I definitely love comments. I'm a big fan of, especially fun, positive comments. But even questions like, oh, I don't know what, I was kind of lost on this, or oh, I'd love to know about this in the future. Those are great because I actually write them down. I don't always use every single one, but I attempt to use as many as I can. All right, let's do the last class, Brawler. Baruch Kazad. All right, and we're back with the very last class. I think I got them all. Yeah. All right, there's a new class coming out too, I heard. So we'll have a little update added video of that in the future with maybe a class thing when that class comes out as well. So stay tuned. Be cool, like I hope it's like a ranger class or something. I don't know how they'd be able to work. Anyway, we're getting off subject. Zarlin, I know. Okay, all right. Zarlin's telling me I'm getting way off subject here, so I'm gonna turn the music down. Zarlin, you're supposed to turn that down for me. But that's okay. Let's talk about the traits for the Brawler. All right, Brawler. Whoop. We have a very similar form to the Minstrel. Now again, the Brawler is the newest class and they did this before the Minstrel. The Minstrel update came afterward. It made the yellow tree kind of like an additional part to one of the other trees. Basically, it's quite straightforward with the Brawler. The blue line is tank. The red line is damage. The yellow line adds some useful things like debuffs. And so again, if I tank in a tree, again, remember this will only be 1 point used if you're whatever you're trading into. The other one will take 2 points to put points into, and yellow will always be an extra 1 in this case because it's specialized, right? Like we talked at the beginning. The yellow tree adds a lot of chance things, buffs, different things. Again, evade, it's things that kind of help you out in combat. and reduce cooldowns and stuff. Again, it's a support thing, right? It's basically a support tree to your other 2 trees, whichever one you pick. So the blue one, again, is going to be focused heavily on defense, giving yourself healing, giving yourself defense. Your metal, right, as they call it, that's the material of basically the charge material your character uses to do stuff with. Every character has a certain thing they use, right? I could go through a whole video and make a video on that if you want. But we're going to just finish up this tree video here. It's very cool, all right? So they are a really fun class. If you like being up close and you want to punch things with metal gloves, and you want to be real tanky and heavy armor and just boom, 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 boom damage, they're super satisfying. They're very fun. So again, I would highlight what's best end game. Probably the red tree for doing damage. If you are going to be the main tank, the Fulcrum is probably good, but the Maelstrom, excuse me, not Storm. I flipped the letters. Is very good for damage. All right, and the Fundamentals is kind of buffing one of the other trees. So that's about it. It's not really too much. They're pretty simple to talk about as well, which is nice. They're not super complicated. What gets a little challenging with them is their skills, but we'll do that on a deep dive video on Brawlers. So again, I hope you enjoyed yourselves, my friends. I had a lot of fun making this video for you, and you guys all have a wonderful day in Middle-earth. Look at this beautiful valley, though. This beautiful, gorgeous valley of, yes. I think we're in the Anduin Valley here. All right. Well, you guys have a great day in Middle-earth. Thanks for watching this whole video. Again, I know Zarlin. I know. Zarlin's going to pick out a video for you here in a second. He had some good ones for you. Subscribe button's going to pop up there if I earned it and you enjoyed yourself. It'd be awesome. Thank you to Skumley for being a royal guard and supporting the channel, and my other patrons. You guys are the best. Next episode Zarlin picked is right up there for another guide video if you want to check it out. And I put that playlist over there. It's my LOTRO Tale playlist where I do voiceovers in Lord of the Rings Online. And we do a lot of other Tolkien content on the channel too. So if you don't want to miss out, you might want to join us. I got links to other social media things down there as well. And you have a great day in Middle-earth, and I'll see you all in the next episodes of Voice of the Rings. We also have a Discord you can join. Go to my newest live stream. The newest one always will have a link that's good for a week. Baruch Hazad Kuzad I menu, and have a great day. And I am Zollin Ironshield, as always. See you guys. Thanks for watching.